Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Picture this. It's 2018. You're scrolling on your phone, you open up a menu, and you spot this friendly blue button that just says Protect. Sounds like a great idea, right? Well, millions of people tap that exact button, completely unaware that by doing so, they were actually installing highly invasive tracking software directly onto their own devices. It's a crazy thought. People genuinely believed they were downloading a free VPN called Onavo Protect to keep their data safe from hackers or snoops on public Wi-Fi. But in reality, they were essentially handing the master keys to their digital lives straight over to Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. Every website, every app, every single thing they did on their phones was suddenly an open book.
So, how did we get here? Let's get into Section 1, Copy, Acquire, and Kill.
To really understand how this happened, we have to look back at Facebook's incredibly aggressive strategy around 2012 and 2013. A clear picture of desperation was starting to form. They bought a tiny 13-person app called Instagram for $1 billion. Then, they tried to clone Snapchat's disappearing photos with an app called Poke, which, well, it failed miserably. By late 2013, a pretty desperate Zuckerberg offered Snapchat $6 billion, and they said no. So completely out of options to simply buy or copy their main rival, Facebook pivoted. They bought an Israeli data compression startup called Onavo for around $100 million.
Now, why Onavo? Well, historically, Facebook made its money tracking you via browser cookies. But as the whole world shifted away from desktops and onto smartphones, Facebook essentially went blind. Apps store their data internally, which makes old-school web cookies completely useless. Onavo's tools, which were marketed to help users save money by compressing their mobile data, routed all of that phone traffic through Onavo's own servers, and that provided Facebook with a secret window into exactly what competitors were doing inside their proprietary apps. It was an absolute goldmine.
To put into perspective just how powerful this window was, Onavo's data revealed that an astonishing 99% of Android users in Spain had WhatsApp installed. And in the US, Onavo showed WhatsApp absolutely crushing Facebook's own messaging numbers. This wasn't just a guess, this was cold, hard market intelligence. It gave Facebook the exact confidence they needed to turn right around and buy WhatsApp for a staggering $19 billion.
Which brings us to Section 2, Project Ghostbusters.
So Onavo had been this incredible treasure trove of competitor data, but soon Facebook hit a massive brick wall. As the entire internet started embracing HTTPS to protect data, Facebook's view into their arch nemesis, Snapchat, went completely dark. If you don't know, HTTPS uses digital judges, called certificate authorities, to verify you're securely connected to the right server, and it scrambles your data so eavesdroppers can't read it. Suddenly, all that juicy Snapchat analytics data that Onavo was funneling to Facebook just looked like unreadable garbage.
And as you can imagine, this did not sit well with leadership. In June of 2016, Mark Zuckerberg sent an email to senior executives stating, and I quote, "Given how quickly they're growing, it seems important to figure out a new way to get analytics about them." That exact quote directly launched a highly secretive internal initiative dubbed Project Ghostbusters. The mission? To bypass Snapchat's encryption by any means necessary so they could see exactly which features users were actually engaging with.
All right, let's look at how they did it in Section 3, the man in the middle.
To pull this heist off, the Onavo team came up with a solution that relied on a classic cybersecurity exploit, literally the kind of thing used to intercept credit card data over sketchy public Wi-Fi. It all hinged on something called a root certificate. Think of this as a master key or a master digital ID stored deep inside your phone's trust store. It dictates which external servers your phone fundamentally trusts. The Onavo Protect app, under the guise of prioritizing your privacy, specifically prompted users to manually install a custom root certificate. By getting users to click yes, Facebook essentially gave itself ultimate administrative access to approve connections on the user's phone.
Here's how it went down. Because Snapchat didn't pin its certificates for its analytics domain, Onavo could force that specific traffic to its own server first. And thanks to that customer root certificate we just talked about, your phone said, yeah, sure, this server is legit. Onavo intercepted the analytics data, unlocked it, copied everything, locked it back up with new encryption, and sent it on its merry way to Snapchat's real servers. From the Snapchat app's perspective, everything looked totally normal, all while Facebook was invisibly siphoning the data.
Now, what's really wild is that these aren't the words of critical journalists or rival tech companies. This is exactly how Facebook internally described their own corporate espionage operation. They knowingly deployed an enormous man-in-the-middle attack, the exact type of malicious interception that VPNs are literally designed to protect you against.
Unsurprisingly, not everyone inside Facebook was thrilled about this. There was severe internal pushback. The head of security engineering actually sounded the alarm, pointing out, "I can't think of a good argument for why this is okay. No security person is ever comfortable with this." They knew that no matter what little consent box a user checked, the general public simply did not understand the extreme level of access they were handing over. But driven by that hunger for market dominance, the project moved forward anyway.
And it gets darker. Section 4, Spying on Teens.
As mobile operating systems eventually got better at blocking these certificate bypasses, Facebook needed new methods. So their target shifted from just watching corporate rivals to directly monitoring the phones of everyday teenagers. Desperate to see what new apps teens were adopting before they became a threat, Facebook launched a shadow operation called Project Atlas. They started paying users, some as young as 13 years old, $20 a month to install a rebranded VPN called the Facebook Research App. This app harvested incredibly sensitive data. We're talking internet history, private videos, and messages between users who had never given any consent to be monitored. Apple strictly banned apps from doing this kind of invasive device-wide tracking, so Facebook evaded Apple's safety checks entirely. They hid the app from the public app store and exploited something called the Apple Enterprise Developer Program. That's a system meant strictly for internal, employee-only corporate apps. Basically, they used a corporate backdoor to sideload this surveillance software directly onto the phones of minors.
Finally, Section 5, the no privacy future. This massive, multi-year surveillance operation finally started to unravel in early 2019. Security researchers exposed the true depth of the teen tracking, showing that it mirrored the exact same old Onavo infrastructure. The public backlash was swift. Apple immediately revoked Facebook's enterprise certificates and banished the app, forcing Facebook to shut the whole shadow program down.
But you're probably wondering, what about consequences? Well, it took a few years, but in 2023, an Australian federal court officially ruled that Meta and Onavo had engaged in conduct liable to mislead consumers. They explicitly marketed a privacy tool while secretly harvesting data for business purposes. The court slapped them with a combined fine of $13 million.
Now, a $13 million fine sounds massive to a normal person, right? But for Meta, a company pulling in well over $50 billion in profit annually, that fine isn't a punishment. It's absolute pocket change. It essentially sends the message that violating the privacy of millions, spying on rivals, and harvesting data from teenagers is simply the highly profitable cost of doing business.
I want to leave you with this final thought. Over the years, we've kind of been conditioned to trade our personal data for a little bit of convenience or shiny free app. But as we've seen with Onavo, that data is weaponized to maintain corporate monopolies. As Mark Zuckerberg's legacy continues to shift from his stated mission of connecting the world to actively breaking its privacy, we really have to ask ourselves, if we accept these trade-offs for convenience today, are we normalizing a future where opting out of surveillance is literally no longer an option? What are we willing to sacrifice next? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the tools you use and stay curious.
Click the subscribe button. Then, click the bell icon and select all to get every notification.